Picture this. The air is thick with tension along Europe's eastern edge. Out of the haze, armored vehicles grind forward, their engines echoing across the Polish borderlands. In the skies above, the roar of fighter jets splits the silence. British Typhoons scramble at a moment's notice while French Rafales swing east, sensors probing the horizon for the faintest signs of trouble. Dutch missile batteries swivel toward the northeast, radar beams sweeping with growing urgency. From low altitude, Czech helicopters skim along the frontier, while Italian surveillance planes and refueling tankers orbit non-stop, drawing invisible circles in the sky. Across the border in Kaliningrad, Russian defenses flicker awake. Officially, Belarus insists this is nothing more than a drill. But across Europe, leaders see it differently. Less like practice, more like a line being tested. And everyone knows this is no longer just routine maneuvers. Something bigger has shifted. That shift came suddenly. On the night of September 11, 2025, a squadron of Russian drones slipped across Polish skies. It was supposed to be a small move, a low-level probe. Instead, it triggered the alliance's fastest chain of response since the end of World War II. Within seconds, Polish F-16 and Dutch F-35 were climbing into the same patch of air, backed by NATO's Flying Radar Command Post and refueling aircraft. The next morning, Eastern Sentry was born, a constant round-the-clock security mission blanketing Poland and the Baltic states. From every corner of Europe, reinforcements streamed east. Denmark dispatched F-16s and even a warship to the Baltic Sea. France deployed its Rafale fighters, Germany doubled down with Eurofighters, and the UK made it clear its Typhoons stood ready to shoot down drones over Polish territory. London also sent heavy transport aircraft from its Brize Norton base, creating a steady air bridge that carried men and machines to the front lines. What once had been a lifeline for Ukraine now became part of a broader shield protecting NATO's own soil. Meanwhile, Paris took its support further than just planes. New defense agreements between France and Poland tightened cooperation, linking French jets directly into Poland's defensive patrols. Their advanced radars and protective systems gave Allied squadrons sharper vision against low-flying threats that might otherwise slip by. That same evening, President Emmanuel Macron went on national television to announce France's immediate role. 3 Rafale fighters would join NATO's Eastern Watch. He framed the mission bluntly: Europe's safety comes first, and France would not be cowed by Moscow's attempts to scare its neighbors. As he spoke, Macron emphasized that he was in close touch with Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, as well as NATO's Secretary General, Mark Rutte. The message was clear. This was not Article 5, the clause declaring all-out war, but it was its spirit in action, a visible promise that the alliance would not hesitate to close ranks when tested. On the ground, the mood shifted from unease to grim determination. Villages near the Polish-Belarusian border buzzed with the constant hum of helicopters and the distant thunder of tanks being moved into staging areas. Local residents, who had grown used to military exercises over the years, felt this time was different. Kids watched in awe as fighter jets streaked overhead, while parents whispered about what the sudden rush of soldiers and armored vehicles might mean. Grocery store radios carried breaking news every hour, and people kept one eye on the sky whenever they stepped outside. Inside NATO command centers, maps lit up with new markers every few minutes. Drone sightings, radar blips, suspected incursions, they all fed into the alliance's vast digital nerve system. Generals from multiple nations huddled together in video calls, their voices sharp, their tone urgent. Orders rippled outward in dozens of languages, but with one message: stay ready. In Germany, air bases came alive. Mechanics worked under floodlights to arm Eurofighters, while crews in heavy jackets guided jets onto tarmacs slick with autumn rain. In Denmark, sailors prepared their frigate's missile systems as it steamed toward the Baltic, tasked with intercepting anything that might threaten NATO's sea lanes. Meanwhile, in Norway, F-35s practiced night interceptions, ready to plug into the Eastern Sentry grid at a moment's notice. Even smaller allies pulled their weight. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania didn't have vast air fleets, but they threw their radar stations, special forces units, and ground-based missiles into the mix. Each country knew they sat on the front line, and their cooperation made the alliance's shield thicker. In Washington, the White House avoided fiery speeches but made quiet moves. Extra reconnaissance satellites shifted their orbits to stare at Kaliningrad and western Russia. U.S. tankers and AWACS aircraft rotated into European bases, swelling the daily patrol rhythm. American generals stressed restraint. No one wanted to start a shooting war, but the message was unmistakable. NATO would not blink. Moscow, for its part, tried to spin the situation. State TV anchors described NATO's actions as overreaction theater, claiming Russia had only conducted a routine technical drill. Yet Russian social media told a different story. Photos of long convoys moving through Smolensk and Kaluga, trains packed with armored vehicles, soldiers posting shaky videos of themselves near the Belarusian border. The Kremlin insisted everything was under control, but the signs of nervousness leaked through. Meanwhile, civilians across Europe tuned in anxiously. In Warsaw, crowds gathered outside the Ministry of Defense, waving both Polish and EU flags, chanting for strength and unity. In Paris and Berlin, TV talk shows debated whether this was the start of something historic, or just another flare-up that would eventually cool. In London, newspapers carried bold front-page headlines like NATO locks shield and Europe on alert. And then came the whispers. Was this the start of a slow-motion war, one that might unfold not with dramatic invasions, but with constant pressure? What's really different now isn't just the noise of jets or the rumble of tanks. It's the rules of the game that have shifted. Until recently, spotting a drone or unidentified aircraft meant a long chain of checks. Confirm, reconfirm, then request clearance before pulling the trigger. That lag could take precious minutes. But after the sudden wave of Russian UAVs slipped into Polish skies, NATO quietly rewired the process. Fewer confirmations, quicker green lights, and faster missile locks mean the alliance can hit back in seconds, not minutes. This new rhythm is layered like a fortress in the sky. At the highest altitude, big AWACS surveillance planes and fuel tankers keep watch and extend patrol endurance. Below them, fighter jets from multiple nations, F-35s, F-16, Rafales, and Eurofighters, fly constant loops, ready to intercept. On the ground, a patchwork of air defense systems, Patriots from the Netherlands, IRISTs from Germany, and SAMPTs from France, stand guard. The idea is simple. No single sensor, no single country carries the burden. Instead, overlapping radars and mixed task forces create a web too tangled for Moscow to exploit. One false step, one miscalculation, and NATO would see it instantly. The Netherlands didn't wait on the sidelines. Alongside its fighters, it sent 300 troops and Patriot missile batteries straight into Poland. Sweden joined with additional air support, weaving itself into the growing reinforcement chain that regional media now calls a security lifeline. Suddenly, Poland's once ambitious dream of permanent 24/7 air cover no longer looks impossible. It's happening. On the ground, Poland has been moving at breakneck speed. 40,000 troops now stretch along its eastern border. Surveillance towers, electronic jammers, concrete and steel fortifications, and rapid response units are all tied into a single command system. Every camera, radar, and patrol feeds data into one central nerve center. It's Poland's direct answer to the spectacle of Russia and Belarus staging their massive Zapad 2025 drills nearby. Where Minsk says just exercises, Warsaw counters with visible concrete deterrence. Europe's leaders aren't fooled by the exercise label either. They see the troop buildups and drone flights as a probe, a temperature check. That's why the political ground has shifted as much as the military one. NATO announced it is moving from temporary reactions to permanent defense measures. EU capitals lined up behind that message. Germany quadrupled its Eurofighter patrols and extended them through year's end. Denmark pledged both jets and a frigate. France's Rafales sit ready on Polish runways. The UK openly confirmed its Typhoons will join the mission. And then comes the heavy steel. Poland quietly received 38 brand new US M1A2 Abrams tanks, more than the entire armored fleets of some European armies. It's not just firepower, it's a statement. The cost of testing NATO's patience is climbing higher by the day. Meanwhile, Russia and Belarus hardened their rhetoric. Putin himself toured the Zapad drills, cameras following as he inspected mock battlefield setups. Reports from independent outlets like Belset hinted that tactical nuclear scenarios were rehearsed, imagery that sent shivers through European capitals already on edge. For Warsaw, the lesson goes back to 2022, when Russia's invasion of Ukraine shattered the old European security order. Ever since, Polish planners have framed every strategy around one blunt question. If Moscow pushes west, who stops the first Russian tank, and with what? Their answer has become a new doctrine built on three pillars. Turn NATO's Article 5 from a political promise into a living, breathing shield on the ground. Supercharge Poland's own firepower until it's unmatched in Europe. Transform the country's wide, open plains into a fortress border no Russian unit could cross. Each of these pillars is already visible, not as theory, but as soldiers in trenches, radars sweeping skies, and tanks rolling east. In just 2 years, Poland's army has swelled from 216,000 to 250,000 active soldiers, with plans to hit 300,000 by 2030. Entire new brigades are being formed, 10 of them, each loaded with advanced artillery and drones that feed commanders real-time surveillance. But the biggest shift isn't in the infantry. It's in the steel beasts Poland is stacking up, its armored divisions. Warsaw has made its intentions unmistakable. If Russia dares to send tanks westward, Poland wants to have more waiting for them than Moscow could ever expect. The country is building an armored fleet of over 1,500 modern tanks, eclipsing the total stock of many of Europe's larger militaries combined. But this isn't just about raw numbers. It's about where they're placed and how they're used. Take the South Korean-made K2 Black Panthers. The first units now sit in Braniwo, just miles from Russia's Kaliningrad outpost. U.S. Abrams tanks have rolled into Pawlowsk, close to American ammunition stockpiles on the Baltic coast. Together, they form iron checkpoints at Poland's most vulnerable seams. If Moscow falls back on its traditional doctrine, heavy artillery barrages followed by massed ground thrusts, Poland's counter is already wired in, long-range precision fire. U.S.-supplied HIMARS launchers and South Korea's Chunmoo systems give Warsaw the ability to hit targets up to 900 kilometers away. For Russian planners, that's a nightmare. Deep bases, supply hubs, even staging areas would all be within reach. Then comes the air defense revolution. It's a three-tiered shield. At the top, Patriot Pack 3 interceptors for high-altitude strikes. In the middle, CAMM systems. At the lowest rung, Piorun man-portable missiles, light enough for a soldier to fire from the shoulder. By 2030, Poland aims to add Arrow 3 interceptors, rockets designed to smash ballistic missiles in outer space. This network is so automated that the instant a launch from Belarus is detected, the system assigns which layer fires first. Even a Russian jet hugging mountainsides would face the threat of a Polish soldier waiting below with a shoulder-fired Piorun. The land defenses are just as thick. The Eastern Shield Project is filling the Belarusian border with reinforced trenches, remote-controlled minefields, and towers bristling with sensors. Add to that 40,000 local defense volunteers, WOT militia units who know the swamps, forests, and villages like home turf, and any infiltration attempt risks turning into a drawn-out quagmire. So what's the real aim? Capability, not ambiguity. Poland is putting its muscle on open display to send a message. Don't miscalculate. But doesn't this kind of buildup make the risk of accidents, like one jet mistaking another, skyrocket? That's exactly why NATO's Eastern Century framework was built with layers of deconfliction. Civil air corridors are constantly updated. Combat air patrol zones are staggered in both time and space so fighters don't overlap. Ground-based missile batteries, Patriots, IRISTs, SAMP/Ts, don't make firing calls in the field. They're controlled from centralized command hubs. The logic is to balance speed with discipline. lightning-fast reactions, but safeguards against sparks that could ignite something bigger. And why Poland at the center of it all? Because the Rzeszów-Lublin corridor isn't just Polish. It's NATO's lifeline into Ukraine. A single night of drone attacks against that route showed how quickly the entire logistics chain could be threatened. That's why Warsaw is boosting not just its planes and tanks, but also its cyber arsenal. Defending servers, airports, and municipal grids is treated as no less urgent than defending runways. Hack a radar feed, jam a logistics hub, or cripple a power grid, and the effect can be as destabilizing as bombs.
If you've made it this far into the video, it means you're enjoying what we do here at Euro Bulletin. Take a second to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more updates and insights from Europe and its partners. Let's dive in more into the subject.
Meanwhile, NATO's naval presence in the Baltic hums quietly. Denmark's air defense frigate, combined with German and Polish coastal radars, creates a unified sea picture. The mission isn't to fire missiles but to erase ambiguity. Every approach vector is illuminated, every corridor mapped, reducing the chances of surprise. This philosophy, anticipating the crisis before it erupts, is now baked into NATO's eastern flank. France and Poland have formed a new defense axis. Germany is preparing a permanent brigade for Lithuania. Denmark and the Netherlands continue to rotate units eastward. The UK's rhetoric has sharpened, matching its deployments with political weight. The alliance has shifted from patching holes to building a wall. Russia and Belarus, of course, are unlikely to sit idle. Expect more low-altitude tests over Belarusian skies, thick electronic warfare signals around Kaliningrad, and exercise troop movements designed to blur the line between drills and preparation. NATO's answer has been to multiply sensors, cross-check every signal, and log evidence as if building a legal case. Precision meant to prevent accidents and expose provocations. In the short term, the shape of the skies is already changing. More combat air patrols, closer together. Quick reaction. Alert windows pushed earlier, like a clock reset for daylight saving. Tanker routes inching northward to support the new tempo. Think of it like this. NATO isn't just stacking troops and hardware at Poland's edge. It's wiring the whole system to react faster, smarter, and with fewer blind spots. Take air defense, for example. Poland and its allies don't leave gaps hanging open. If radar coverage thins out somewhere, they literally plug and play by sliding a Patriot, IRIST or SAMP/T battery into position, then rotate them in and out like clockwork. At the same time, deconfliction with civilian planes is treated as routine. Every few hours, NOTAMs, aviation safety notices, update air corridors, shifting civilian routes so there's no chance of confusion when NATO jets race upward. On the land side, the 40,000 Polish troops and territorial units on the Belarus border aren't just digging in. They're actively patrolling, testing electronic sensors, and coordinating with the new command and control network. It's a living curtain, not a static wall. But the real question is sustainability. Can this intensity last? NATO already answered yes, but not by dumping the burden on Poland alone. Eastern Sentinel isn't a flash response. It's designed as a months-long operating rhythm. And if Russia tries a second wave of drone incursions, the system will tighten even further. Where the first time it took multiple checks before a target was called hostile, the second time the thresholds drop. What once required layers of confirmation gets tagged as a threat much faster. That doesn't mean NATO is pulling triggers wildly. It means speed is prioritized, and Moscow's cost for cheap drone tests skyrockets. Every UAV crossing from Belarus now carries diplomatic consequences because Europe ties together three levers at once: border closures, layered air defense, and fresh economic penalties. Suddenly, Russia's little tactical games multiply into massive strategic headaches. This creates a paradox. Article 5, NATO's famous all-for-one clause, isn't invoked. Yet the daily reality, the planes circling, the radars watching, the troops mobilized, creates the same effect as if it had been. In practice, Poland sits under a living Article 5 shield, even without the formal declaration. For Warsaw, the logic is crystal clear. Keep the Rzeszów-Lublin artery alive. That single corridor is Ukraine's lifeline to the west. Protect it, and Moscow's war logistics grind against a wall. Lose it, and Ukraine's supply line chokes. This isn't a midnight emergency anymore. It's the dawn of a new order meant to last months, not days. NATO has flipped the script. Instead of scrambling to patch crises, it's building a permanent regime of deterrence. And the picture today? Combat air patrols. British Typhoons, French Rafales, German Eurofighters, Polish F-16 cross each other's tracks above Poland. Patriot batteries in the forests lock their radars eastward. Danish frigates and German coastal stations sweep the Baltic for low-flying threats. Italian AWACS circle, relaying data into the Allied network. Dutch soldiers stand beside their missile systems. Every piece clicks into the same sentence: reduce surprise, shorten reaction, and stop sparks before they ignite. Moscow and Minsk can label it just a drill. But Europe reads it as something much larger. The cost of miscalculation is rising by the hour. And if another wave comes, the sky will not be dark for long. The radars are lit. The rules are set. The shield is thick. For the people living under this new shield, life feels different now, even if it looks almost normal at first glance. On the Polish side of the border, villages that once went quiet after sundown now hum through the night. You hear the low growl of generators powering radar towers, the chop of helicopters cutting through the dark, and sometimes the sudden roar of jets scrambling overhead. Farmers in the Lublin countryside joke about living under the flight path, but when kids draw pictures at school, they sketch Patriots and Typhoons alongside tractors and barns. Soldiers rotate through border duty in a rhythm that feels endless. Some stand watch in freezing towers, eyes fixed on glowing screens, tracking faint dots creeping across the horizon. Others sit in the mud, shoulder-fired Pioran missiles slung across their backs, knowing they may be the last line if a low-flying drone slips past bigger systems. Many are reservists or members of the WOT militia, men and women who worked regular jobs just weeks ago. Teachers, shopkeepers, mechanics, now patrolling with rifles along trenches carved into the flat Polish plain. In Warsaw, you see the buildup reflected in little ways. Billboards show recruitment ads for the armed forces. News tickers on public transport announce new deployments and military cooperation deals almost as often as sports scores. Coffee shops buzz with conversations about the exercises across the border, but the tone is cautious, not panicked, more like neighbors discussing a storm on the horizon that just won't move. For the soldiers, the tempo is relentless. At air bases, crews sleep in shifts next to their jets, ready to scramble within minutes. Pilots spend hours strapped into cockpits, flying endless cap loops over the same slices of sky, eyes darting between radar screens and the horizon, where faint glimmers could be birds or drones. Tank crews in Powitz and Braniewo live in armored columns, their machines lined up and fueled, each one a symbol of deterrence more than destruction. Across the Baltics, the civilian side of this deterrence is just as sharp. In Vilnius, people see NATO convoys rumble through the streets more often, carrying German or Dutch soldiers toward staging grounds. In Riga, the skyline sometimes flickers with AWACS planes circling overhead, their domes like watchful eyes. Schools conduct cyber safety drills alongside fire drills, reminding kids that a hack shutting down power or communications is as real a threat as a blackout from a storm. The constant presence of allies, French Rafales landing in Poland, Danish frigates docking in Baltic ports, German Eurofighters flying in formation with Polish jets, has reshaped daily imagination. A shopkeeper in Gdansk might casually mention spotting the French ones flying over yesterday, while fishermen in the Baltic talk about seeing unusual naval silhouettes on the horizon. For civilians, there's unease, yes, but also a strange comfort. The skies aren't empty anymore. They're crowded with protectors. The roads carry not just trade trucks, but convoys of soldiers. And while everyone knows the risk of an accident or escalation is real, the visible shield makes people feel less alone. For the troops, though, the shield is both weight and duty. Long hours, constant drills, the ever-present thought that a split-second mistake could trigger something far bigger. They live with radios at their hips, helmets within arm's reach, and a shared awareness. History may not wait decades to test them. It might arrive in the next radar blip.